It's not surprising news, but disappointing news. Welcome back to the National Briefing. I am Kelly Nash, but we will correct the misinformation that is apparently being taught to children for the last 20 or 30 years. I know that the education system has failed because Harry Enton over on CNN is giving us the results of a poll which clearly indicate that the American youngsters have no idea what the real world is.
The fact is, socialism is not a four-letter word in Democratic primaries, not among Democratic voters. Look at this. Net popularity of socialism among Democrats. You go back to 2010, it was plus 7 points. Look how high it is now, up like a rocket, up to plus 36 points. That's a jump of nearly 30 points on the net popularity scale.
Socialism has grown by 30 points in popularity in the last 15 years. That's horrific, but it's even worse. What about capitalism?
Falling through the floor at minus 13 points. That's a drop of over 20 points in just 15 years. So we see the exact.
So they hate capitalism. They love socialism. That shows that they don't know what each of those do. You don't understand it. But fear not, in less than 10 minutes, I will, hopefully, if you've got a youngster in the vehicle you're listening, or perhaps you're watching on YouTube or some other social media platform, we will, in less than 10 minutes, hopefully re-educate your young minds of mush. I'll start with an opening statement from the former president of the United States, Ronald Reagan, and I'll point out before this statement, we have never achieved communism on this earth. We've never actually gotten there. Every country has collapsed under the weight of socialism, but they call themselves communist countries because that was the ultimate goal. Mr. Reagan, talk to us about the success of communism.
Communism works only in heaven where they don't need it, and in hell where they've already got it.
That is correct, sir, and we will start our class right now. All right. Communism is the eventual goal of socialism. That is true of Plato, who was talking like this, or more recently, Karl Marx in the 1800s. The goal is to eventually get to a place where everybody is taken care of. You own nothing. You own nothing, but you are in their opinion, well taken care of. You have a beautiful home. You have a fulfilling job that you get to do. You just understand that all your needs will be met by the Communist Party. But you got to start with socialism. So the main difference between communism and socialism, the reason we never got to communism anywhere, Soviet Union never got to it, Cuba never got to it, all these places, China, nobody's gotten to it. In a communist country, you get to own nothing. The property is communally owned, and all the businesses are controlled by the state. In a socialist country, you still can own some property. Of course, if it's too big or egregious, we're going to have to seize that because it's too gaudy. And you can also own some smaller businesses. The bigger businesses will probably be taken over by the government and they'll tell you that it's for good reasons, right? Like, maybe they'll take over the social media platforms and they'll say it's because too many girls are comparing themselves to social media influencers and it's leading to suicide. So we're going to prevent suicides by doing that and raise the esteem. Or, too much hate speech is being spread and people are being radicalized. They'll even point to you and say, hey, look, the people are being radicalized. They're taking shots at politicians and stuff. We want to end that. They want to just control free speech. They just want to shut free speech down. So you get a revolution going by getting the middle class, lower middle class, and poor upset that there's a ruling class. There's obviously going to be a lot more of them than there are ruling class. You get them to rise up against them. They're the reason you're at where you're at in life. It's not because of your bad decisions. It's not because of your lack of work ethic. It's not because of anything other than they are screwing you. That's why you ended up where you are. So let's get rid of them, and then we can have this utopia. That's what Bernie Sanders would tell you. I want to outlaw billionaires. Nobody should have $1 billion. Okay, so that's their plea right now. They're following the playbook. After they get to that level, what's going to happen after the revolution? Well, now they start taking over some of the major businesses. And like I said, they're going to say, this is in your best interest. Where has that worked? I know a lot of them are begging to point out like Finland, like some of these little tiny, just little like not even as big as like Mississippi type of states, and say, look, it's doing great in Norway. What they fail to recognize or publicly recognize, perhaps they recognize it inside their own little inner circles, is that those countries are only alive today because of the European Union, which is mostly not socialist. And by the way, those countries are not mostly socialist either. They have small parts of socialism, meaning like maybe their health care. And when they have a real health scare, those people flee those countries and they come to the United States because we have the best surgeons, because we're inspired by money. That's the difference. The idea in a socialist country is the government decides what's best for all people, and then they assign you your task to make sure that we're taking care of people. How could you possibly know what to charge for medicine? How could you know what to charge for a roof? How could you possibly know what to charge for, a basic plumbing issues? You can't because you're greedy. So they're going to remove the greed from you. Capitalism recognizes that people are greedy, and we incentivize you to be more productive, because the greedier you are, the more productive you'll be. Of course, there's a downside on that. In some instances, people become criminals. You don't think there's criminals in socialist societies who are not happy with their lot in life, that I don't want to live like everybody else? Of course there are. So you're not going to remove the crime element by removing capitalism. But as a bigger picture, when I'm inspired to make more money, I become more productive. If I'm more productive in a job that provides something to the good for society, then I, out of my own greed, am helping the rest of society. That's the way it works. That's why people don't flee to go to Cuba or Venezuela or Russia. They don't go to those places. They're not kicking in the doors for the socialism. They're kicking in the doors at the United States because this is the land of milk and honey. You have a shot here. And by the way, I'll point out that when you look at our poor, and I'm not talking about the homeless, because the homeless are for the most part mentally ill. I'm talking about the people who are just poor, the people on welfare. Those people's quality of life, while it's far substandard to what I would want in my life, it far exceeds the average lifestyle in Cuba today, right now. They've had socialism in Cuba now since the 1960s. How much longer is it going to take for that to be successful? It's never going to be successful. Socialism can't be successful. It always collapses under its own weight. And the youngsters who think it's a good idea either are delusional. No, I'll just go with they're delusional. That's it. They're delusional. It never works. It can't. If you look at a problem and say it's failed 100% of the time, 100% of the time, unless there's an outside force, like I said, the European Union is going to kick in, it fails every time. I don't want America to fail. Nobody living in America should want America to fail, because if it fails, your life sucks. And by the way, the United States is still the last great beacon of hope for many around the world. It's an inspiration to many, and that's why they're coming here. Who sang it? Neil Diamond? They're coming to America.